Okay, that's it. Just going on now, Councillor McGurk.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Board. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to this meeting. Before we start, Robert, could you please check all members are present?
Yeah, from my records here, Councillor McGurk, I can see that Councillor Stephen Burns isn't in attendance and Councillor Colin McCulloch isn't in attendance.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Councillor McCulloch's just trying to log on just now.
Right.
Should be here directly.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, is it okay? We'll just continue then, Kevin. He'll come in shortly.
I can see Stephen, Councillor Burns has just entered as well.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So the reason, any apologies then? We don't have any apologies, Robert? Any declaration of interest? Members? Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, I've stated the declaration in the column right hand side, and I'll not be taking part in the discussion of debate.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Nicholson. Right, members, we're here today to discuss the reason for the meeting is to discuss item 1, which is the planning application 190810 PP, erection of 603 dwelling houses with associated access, parking and landscape at grounds of Dykebar Hospital, Grahamston Road, Paisley, page 1 to 44. At the Planning Board last week, Tuesday the 19th of the 1st, we as a board unanimously agreed to refuse this application. The meeting today is to discuss the reasons for our rejection. During last week's meeting, I attempted to attach my list of reasons to the screen. I clicked and dragged, but later on noticed that hadn't attached. I then instructed an officer to circulate the reasons to members via email. Unfortunately, this instruction was not carried out. At this point, I'll ask Ken to come in and explain further. Ken, could you come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, in relation to the procedure today, I think because clearly the unusual situation for the board today, which I thought would be helpful if I could clarify to members of the board what, in my view, the status of the application is at this point, both legally and procedurally. Now, there's a couple of legal points, and I appreciate that this might be stating things that you already know, but members will be aware that in terms of planning legislation, a decision on a planning application isn't final until the decision notice is signed. So we haven't got to that stage yet. The decision notice must, of course, reflect the decisions that are taken at the board. Now, members will also be aware that there's a statutory requirement. It's not optional, it's a statutory requirement that the decision notice has to set out the reasons for any decision that it is taken. So with these points in mind, the issue then becomes, where does that leave the present application, bearing in mind, as Councillor McGurk's outlined, what happened last week. Now, in essence, what happened is that there was a motion to reject the application that had been seconded. There was no alternative proposition put forward, and there was no discussion about the motion or response of the convener, and there was no reasons for the decision available to the board. Based on this, objectively and legally, the board's position would be seen as the board being minded to refuse the application, but the planning authority was not in a position to issue a valid decision notice for the reasons I've just explained above. That is why, in my view, and that is why in discussion with the convener, my recommendation was that the authority must meet again to conclude its consideration of the application and must also agree the reasons for the final decision it takes. So hopefully that explanation of the legal position has been helpful to members, and with that in mind, I would just pass back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Ken, for that. Members, can I ask you, because I didn't send the information to you, I actually asked for it to be attached to the board paper today to make it a bit easier for you. Can you go to page 2? Neil Graham, do you want to come in? Neil.
Sorry, I'll come in a bit, sorry.
All right, okay, thanks for that. Can we go to page 2 and you'll see the reasons for refusal, members? Now, the proposed application fails to meet a key principle of Scottish planning policy with regard to the right development in the right place for the following reasons. Now, today, for the benefit of everyone, I will read them out. And we can do them one by one, if you wish. Number 1, the high level of tree cover being removed to accommodate housing units as an unacceptable impact to the natural environment, contrary to Scottish planning policy, which states planning permission should be refused where the nature or scale of proposed development would have an unacceptable impact on the natural environment. And I'm asking members if they want to ask any questions on that one or add anything to it. Can we agree? Bill Brown, please come in. Councillor Brown. Neil, I'll let you in a wee minute, but Bill has to come in first. Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Standing practice is that if a matter is raised and discussed, it is not then allowed to be raised again for 6 months. Can I ask why we are back here with within the 6 months?
Ken, would you like to come in and respond to that, please?
Yes, I can explain that. I mean, as I explained before, the planning decision isn't actually made until the notice is issued, a signed notice is issued. So the board hasn't finished making a decision on this item. The 6-month rule only applies where another decision's being made that's contrary to a previous decision. So on the basis that no decision in planning law terms has been made, then in my view, that 6-month rule that Councillor Brown is bringing up does not apply in this case.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Bill?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Neil?
To clarify that, do we need to take another vote today? Or does last week's vote still count?
Ken?
Yeah, the position is that because the board hasn't reached the final decision on the matter, then the application itself is there for consideration. Now, as I said in my introductory comments, the outcome of what happened last week was that we'd be seen as the board being minded to reach a decision on that. But in my view, there still needs to be a motion to either approve or refuse the application, or whatever other outcome the elected members may wish to have. But clearly there is also a need for members to reach a view on whatever reasons should apply for the decision that it takes.
Bill, do you want to come back in on that?
Oh, that's fine.
Neil?
I'm just asking what exactly are we agreeing? Are you going to go through all the points that you want to refuse and we agree each one, or is that what you're planning to do?
It was suggested that you may want to take them one by one, but if the board is happy to accept that the reasons for refusal which are recorded there, they can either come in and agree all of them or part of them, or make alterations to some of them if they wish to do that. But I'm stating these are my reasons for the refusal, and I'm asking the board to accept them. Whose hand is up? I can't see who it is.
It's Councillor McNaughton.
Councillor McNaughton, thank you. Please come in.
It was just to say that I actually have, I would say, to augment your reasons for refusal, a couple of points to make, but I'll come in at an appropriate time.
Okay. So I am still asking the board to accept my refusal of this application, and here are the reasons that I've presented to the board today for that refusal. Will the board members agree, or do board members want to add anything to this? Councillor McNaughton, do you want to come in now?
Yes, thanks, convener. And I mean, it's just to say that this is a major planning application for much needed houses and deserves careful consideration in terms of planning policy. And I would pay tribute first to the planning officers who negotiated changes for the better in this application over a considerable number of months. And the proposals have been enhanced by their input. However, on balance, I don't feel I can support it. And the main reasons for that, which add to your reasons, is that in particular on education, the proposal would result in a large housing estate at one end of the town with schools at the other end of the town, and encouraging hundreds more car journeys through the centre of Paisley, contributing to congestion and poor air quality. And I think we can do a lot better than that. So that's one main reason. Another, again, to augment your issues on the transport, I've got grave reservations about approving an application where the report of handling acknowledges that the road into the estate will back up with traffic at busy times. Yeah. Let's not plan for congestion, but design to avoid the need for as much commuting. We all expect, that work patterns will change after COVID. Then the focus will be, and this year in particular, on global warming. And against that background, it's incumbent on us to ask, there's a clear direction in terms of the government's planning policy towards 20-minute neighbourhoods. So even at this stage, it's incumbent on us to ask, well, where will folk get them a pint of milk? Is it close enough by? So just in terms of this proposal as it stands, we need to be more than just building houses. We need to build communities, and that don't rely on a traditional suburb in the car. So against that background, those are my main reasons for refusal.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept them as additions to mine. Is that okay with you, Councillor McNaughton?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stephen Burns and then Councillor Graham. Stephen Burns.
Thanks, convener. Just to bring forward the traffic concerns I've got. The nearest supermarket is 1.6 miles away. Primarily that's only open from 8 in the morning to 10 at night. So you've got to take climate change into account. There's no dentists nearby or GP surgery. They'll all be a few miles away. So I think we should be taking the climate change policy and objecting the application. I've also got concern the nearest school is near enough 2 miles away, which will be, again, implementing the climate change. I think we should just be going for objection. It's far too far. It's residential streets. You're going to need to go through Seed Hill to get to the nearest secondary, which is Paisley Grammar, which is an impact on local residents as well. One other thing, could I ask you just to maybe go through the reasons so the members of the public that are not at the meeting can hear the reasons for objection?
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Graham, I'll let you in first. Neil, you're still muted. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I've got one question on the application, and then just a couple of comments about the board last week. So is it okay to ask both of them?
Of course.
Thank you. First of all, just the first reason is, what are your reasons for going against the planning officers? Obviously, we've seen that the council have put this forward for to grant the application. So what was your for reasons for going against that? And also just on, I think you said at the start of the meeting that there was a technical glitch or something that happened last week, or the officers didn't do what you had asked them to do. Now, when I look back at the recording, I noticed that you said you were going to move to refuse it, and you got seconders for that. And you said that you would circulate the response for refusal to the board after the meeting. So how does that sort of correlate the two? because I'm just struggling to understand that. I'm just saying about the way that the board was chaired last week. I thought you rushed through it extremely quickly. Gave very little time for myself or any other members of the board. I actually did want to raise a point which I raised at the start about the planning officers, why you went against them. And before I sort of knew it, we were on to the next item. Now, obviously, this was my first planning board that I'd been on, so I let it go. I didn't want to make a fuss, but I just think for future, I think we need to spend a bit more time in these applications. I think it got zoned 3 years ago. Over 600 houses. It's a very important application, whether we agree to refuse it or to grant it. I think you just need to give a bit more time to members of the board so that we can discuss it properly, like we're doing today. But if you could answer the first question about the officers, that'd be great. Thanks.
Of course, no problem, Councillor Graham. You've raised a valid point that we should give them more consideration, and actually I think we tried to. However, at the board last week, when I raised a point to refuse, I then got a second from Councillor McNaughton, and I think Councillor Joy also suggested that he would have also supported it at that time. I then asked members if they wanted to make any comment or anything else at that time, and no one did. And then I asked, do you agree? And I thought I heard a loud yes from everyone, and that's what made me go forward, because I was pleasantly surprised, as you know, that what I said at the end of the board was, thank you for your support. That's what happened at the meeting. With regards to the giving the information over, what I meant was that I would put it over and that it would show up in the screen. I don't know the technical term that you use when you click and drag things. I'm not used to doing that. So my thought was, if I put it over and it drops into the box, then it would be shared. And I assumed that you will either see it if I do it or that the officers would do it. But after the meeting, when I realised there was a problem, I asked officers to email all the members of the board with the information straight away, and that wasn't done. Okay, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, but just about if you want to answer it, why did you go against the planning officers on it when they granted it?
Well, remember, this is a quasi board. The planning officers are perfectly entitled to bring to me as the convener a planning application which they feel fit to bring to the board. I can't refuse that. But I don't have to say that I accept it, and that's not the first time, I have to say. Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for that. Councillor Burns, you requested that I read out. Yeah, that was another thing that came out of the board last week. I was always under the impression that anything that we put onto the chat would then be made available to the public. I'm now aware that that isn't the case. So it would be relevant to read out the objections, and if members would bear with me, I'll do that. Councillor Joy, do you want in just now?
Yep. If I can, convener, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a few points I'd like to make. The first is, Councillor Graham had said that it was his first planning meeting last week, and welcome to the board, Neil. My first planning meeting was in 2012, and that's relevant to the discussion because I think in this particular application, convener, it's the first planning application I've seen in 8 years where the traffic department actually raised concerns, and also the SPT raised concerns. These 2 points resonate very strongly with me, because if you think about it, 600 extra houses in that part of Paisley would amount to possibly as many as 1,500 extra cars trying to make their way through Paisley Town Centre to get on to the M8 to Glasgow or elsewhere. And I think because the council's got an agreed position on issues that Councillor Burns has already raised, like biodiversity and climate challenge, we've got a responsibility. The name of this board, convener, as the Communities and Planning Board, we've got a planning duty to make sure that appropriate planning takes place, that we get a sound supply of houses. We've also got a community remit, and I think really to look at the responsibilities of the board, there's too many communities in Renfrewshire that are practically joined up. If you think about my ward, Elderslie and Johnston are practically are almost one community. On the other side, Howwood, which is in my ward, and Speightstown are almost one community. To approve this application would be another step towards obliterating the green lungs of Paisley between Paisley and Barrhead. And I think that's very, very important. We've got a community remit as well, and we need to be responsible for looking at issues, wider issues like climate change and biodiversity, where the council in the last few years has got very strict agreed policies in this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. So if members will bear with me, I'll read the rest of the reasons for refusal. Which I only did one, didn't I? Item number 2, Scottish planning policy has a presumption against land raising and implementation of the precautionary principle regarding flooding. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed land raising would not impact on the potential for increased flooding and natural water tables of the site. Now, I know this area really well, and I remember when the houses were being built in Alloway. If you go and speak to any of the residents there, when they first moved into their homes, they had a lot of flooding which came from this site, the Dyke Bar site, and every one of those households that back onto that had to put in their own flooding prevention. They had no recourse back to the developer at that time. So this is really important for me that we get this right. Number 3, the proposed development creates identifiable issues regarding capacity at the number of local schools within the catchment area, potentially disadvantageous for pupils and the education system as a whole, and no details are provided as to implementation of mitigation. Now, the report clearly says that the Education Board have been in discussions with the applicant and have agreed a sum of money that would maybe mitigate some issues to do with Todholme and St Andrews School, which are the local schools. However, recently there was a request looking for additional facilities within Todholme to provide the nursery, and they couldn't find it at the Todholme School. We had to build, or currently we are building, a nursery provision on the marshes. So the two don't match up. And also Councillor McNaughton's raised some valid points as well. The item 4, the number 4, the proposal increases the level of carbon emissions, and coupled with the removal of extensive tree cover, it will have a net contribution to carbon emissions which have not been fully mitigated by other measures, contrary to the adopted council policy on climate change, which you've just referred to, Councillor Doig and Councillor Burns. Now, they're talking about replacing mature woodland with saplings. It would take years for any of that to come back. Number 5, the local road network, infrastructure and capacity will be adversely impacted, and mitigation measures have not been proposed or demonstrated to minimise this impact. That's absolutely clear, and everyone can see that. Originally, there was a Paisley South expansion, which was the bit in the middle between the university campus and the Dyke Bar estate, which may have allowed for some kind of transport or road network, which would have helped this development. That is no longer the case. We agreed as a board to remove that bit in the middle, and it's no longer there. So the applicant has not demonstrated clearly to me with any satisfaction that the road network that's already there could cope with these 600 housing. It is considered that the density and scale and layout of this proposal is not appropriate to the site, and its impact on existing environment unacceptable, contrary to design principles that development should fit into existing surrounding environment and not change them adversely. The Some of the original drawings showed that they wished to place housing over what's called the wetland. SEPA refused that. They then had to change the design, which meant that they actually brought still 600 houses, but into a smaller space, and really condense the housing beside each other, which is completely adversely wrong, in my opinion, for a site like this. Number 7, the development does not comply with the local development spatial strategy plan in that it fails to contribute positively to the character and appearance of the place, benefiting the amenity of the surrounding area and protecting and enhancing the natural built and cultural heritage and its setting. I don't think I need to add anything to that. Now, members, can I ask if any member wishes to propose anything other than accepting the refusal of the application? Can we agree the refusal of this application with the reasons I've mentioned, with the additional 2 reasons that Councillor McNaughton has added? Councillor, sorry, Ken, you want to come in?
Sorry, just on a legal point, convener, before we go to the vote, it's just I'm conscious of the legal requirement that any decision notice we've got to, I'll just read it out, it's got to include a statement as to whether the authority consider that the application is for a development that is in accordance with the development plan, together with an explanation of why the authority have reached that view. So I'm just conscious that, that perhaps what's been read out doesn't make it clear whether or not we believe that it's in accordance with the development plan.
Councillor McNaughton, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly apparent from those reasons that we consider it not to accord with the development plan. Those are the reasons for it.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. I just wanted to be clear that,
okay.
that has been covered off.
Okay. Thanks for that then. So can we unanimously, Carol, do you want to come in?
Sorry, no, apologies.
Right, okay. Right, members, could I please ask if you all agree to the refusal and to the reasons given, with the addition of Councillor McNaughton's 2 reasons?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Take care, everyone. Thank you.